WWE, its fans, and me, and the Lucha Lounge. Look, I could come on here and talk about all the great things WWE has done, but we're not there. We're going to talk about most of the problems, my views of the problems for the most part, and some solutions. So sit back and relax. Take a load off. We'll be here for a little bit. Get some popcorn. Tasty beverage. Where do I feel WWE is going wrong? Well, I don't know so much if they are going wrong. I think they're doing the best with what they have. They could be doing better. But I think, first and foremost, their history is a good and bad thing. Yes, I've said it. Their history. They have an enormous amount of history. Many eras, and many eras that they have to compete and be compared to. I mean, I don't know how many places I've gone to where people have talked about the Attitude Era, or talked about the Hogan Era, or talked about the good old days way back when. So I think it's that history that plagues WWE, because everyone uses it as a selling point. Well, you guys won the Monday Night Wars, and remember way back when. And the reality is, it's 2007. It's not the Attitude Era. It's the new era. If you're on Raw, it's the era of the Legend Killer. But that's for another point. So I think the history of WWE plays a part in its problems. People want to go back to the glory days, and you really can't go back to the glory days. That was a different time. Another thing really hurting WWE is lack of competition. Yes, TNA fans, yes, ROH fans, I'm sorry, I hate to admit it, but no one is competing against the WWE. My vision of competition is actually someone trying to even be the same night as either Raw, ECW, or SmackDown. But it's good business not to try to compete with WWE until you have everything in order, until you can be a perfect alternative to WWE. And while there doesn't seem to be anything on the horizon just yet, certain things are falling into place for certain companies, it's still lack of competition, and that poses a big problem. And then there's and I hate to say it, the fact that you have a developmental system. While it has done you some justice in the past, your current roster is a product of it. It has also produced a lot of the same type of wrestler. And when you have people coming from the same school of thought, it creates that kind of stagnant, nothing new. And I think why people look at Ring of Honor, and why people look at, why people clamor for Jericho, and why people clamor for RVD, and why people clamor for the good old days also, is because those guys way back when, from RVD to the ECW originals to Jericho and so on and so forth, is that those guys actually were in the indies for some time and had to travel the roads and matured in that way of creating their own persona and their own identity, and not being either given their identity or but being allowed to create their own identity, which is paramount for anyone that's a big name or becomes a big name. So I think the developmental system sometimes has an issue. So I mean, you're talking history, lack of competition, and developmental system. Now, aside from those three, there is a certain aura that there are problems. I mean, WWE is so exposed, people talk about it so much, try to analyze it so much, that also plays it. There's so much analysis on what goes on, what potentially goes on behind the scenes, And again, it's, you know, it can tear away at a company or give, you know, you're the big dog. WWE's the big dog. It's what a lot of people think of when they think of wrestling, because it's got the most, I mean, 5 hours a week on any given week, WWE product is there. Probably one more issue, and it's a delicate issue and it's a hot button issue, are all the suspensions. A lot of the injuries to guys in high profile positions, but injuries are a name of the game. Suspensions are a name of the game because WWE does have a wellness program. It's probably one of the only ones within the wrestling community that does have drug testing and a wellness program. Regardless of the critics of it, it still does what it needs to do. So there you go. I mean, there's about 4, potentially 5 hard issues. Now, not all is lost. I mean, they're still the top dog, so the only changes I could see them making really that would help out the product would be to give the roster, everyone within the roster, an opportunity to see what they've got, to see what they can make of what character they have, what gimmick they might have, so on and so forth, to see if they can really be pushed to the next level. I mean, guys like the Hardys have been there for so long and yet are still just barely on the cusp of being considered main eventers. You've got guys on the roster who've been there for X amount of years. You know, take guys like Paul and Brian Kendrick, who have even been tag team champions for over a year, you know, when they were on SmackDown, and yet you never heard them talk on the mic, ever. And I think that can be kind of a shame. I mean, there's so many ways that they can creatively push guys and make them into bigger stars and more thing. And it's not just the commentary, it's also giving those guys an opportunity to get people emotionally invested. And a lot of times it's hearing that person talk. And then you find out if they're a good talker, and if they're not, then you tweak them and you see. But and then just certain booking aspects where stuff just doesn't really seem to fall in line. I don't mind the over the top stuff, but ultimately what I'd like to see is just each show being different, where, you know, Raw is what Raw is. It's the flagship. It is what is considered the flagship. You know, it's on USA, whatever. And keeping it what it is, and then making ECW the rebellious, kind of in the spirit of what ECW was, as opposed to being WWE CW, being more of, hey man, we're about the people, or however you want to put it. And then SmackDown, going back to what made SmackDown such an entertaining product, which was having guys that actually put on good matches, having the Cruiserweight division. I think with the Cruiserweight division falling by the wayside, you know, it doesn't give people really, you know, doesn't make them different. But the way I look at WWE is it's been around, and there's really no one nipping at its heels to try to force it to change. Cyber Sunday's coming up, and I think every fan that's out there that's going to watch the pay-per-view, or even if you're not going to watch the pay-per-view, if you want to see a change, vote, I guess, would be the best thing to do. If you want to see Ken Kennedy in the main event going after the title, put him out there. Same thing with Jeff Hardy. You know, same thing with certain guys within ECW. And make your voice heard as much as humanly possible. Go to WWE.com. Whatever you can do. You know, it's just, but again, it's the big dog, and really it's not going to do anything until it's challenged. And it's facing, I think ultimately it is at a crossroads. It's lost one of its biggest stars, and slew of injuries, a slew of criticism, you know, Congress looking down at them. So, you know, now's the time to probably change up some stuff and try some new avenues and see where it goes. But hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully it was informative. Next video will probably be on the state of wrestling, so that'll come pretty soon, and I'll have a lot to say on that, state of wrestling as a whole. And you'd be surprised with what my opinion of it is. All right.